Texas seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 667 to redesignate the Dryden Flight Research Center as the Neil A. Armstrong Flight Research Center and the Western Aeronautical Test Range as the Hugh L. Dryden Aeronautical Test Range.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 667, a bill to redesignate the Dryden Flight Research Center as the Neil A. Armstrong Flight Research Center and the Western Aeronautical Test Range as the Hugh L. Dryden Aeronautical Test Range.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, and the gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on H.R. 667, the bill now under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered.
And
the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from California, Kevin McCarthy, the Majority Whip. And I might add the originator and author of this bill.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the chairman for his work. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 667 to honor 2 great pioneers in American aeronautics and space exploration, Dr. Hugh Dryden and Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong was a Navy fighter pilot, engineer, test pilot, astronaut, and educator who was always proud to serve this nation. Before joining the astronaut corps in 1962 and eventually taking the first small step for man, Armstrong served as a test pilot for 7 years at what presently called the NASA Dryden Flight Research Center in Kern County, which I am proud to represent. Armstrong flew thousands of hours as a test pilot, there mainly in experimental jets and high-speed rocket planes. He was also part of the team in the early 1960s who developed the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle used to train our astronauts on how to safely land on the moon. After the success of Apollo 11 mission, Armstrong remained an active contributor to the aeronautic research program at Flight Research Center. Most notably of those was the Digital Fly-by-Wire program, which is recognized today as a far-reaching technological breakthrough. He returned to visit the center in the years that followed and throughout his life remained a strong advocate of the flight research. H.R. 667 would rename NASA's center in his honor, the Neil A. Armstrong Flight Research Center. H.R. 667 would also honor Dr. Hugh Dryden's contribution to aerospace engineering that made many of Neil Armstrong's career achievements possible. Dryden was a key figure in the development of America's aerospace program from the early part of the 20th century to the much more complex programs that are still ongoing at NASA Flight Research Center, Edwards Air Force Base, and China Lake Naval Air Station in my district. He was an early pioneer in aerodynamics over the first half of the 20th century and enabled many scientific breakthroughs. When NASA was created in 1958, Dr. Dryden was chosen to be its first deputy administrator, focusing his energies on the programs that allowed our country to explore space and send our astronauts to the moon. H.R. 667 will memorialize both men by redesignating the Dryden Flight Research Center as the Neil Armstrong Flight Research Center and naming the center test range as the Hugh L. Dryden Aeronautic Test Range. Edwards Air Force Base, Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake, and NASA Flight Research Center in eastern Kern County remain a hub of scientific discovery, aeronautic innovation, and space exploration. I look forward to many more groundbreaking achievements from the men and women inspired by the legacy of Neil Armstrong and Hugh Dryden. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 667 is a fitting tribute to Armstrong and Dryden, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this bill to celebrate the remarkable lives of both men. I yield back the balance of my time.